Welcome back to Heading West, where we bring you the frontier of capital markets and Web3. For episode 11, our guest is going to be Peter, who is the CEO of Pudgy Penguins. So, Peter, thanks so much for being on today.
Hey, nice to be here. CCO.
CCO. There we go.
CCO. Yeah. But yeah, man, glad to be here.
Yeah, most definitely. I know a lot of people are going to be excited about this episode, as I am myself. So to kick things off, I know you do a bunch of different things, and we're going to definitely highlight those. But I would love to hear like the foundational story of like what got you started within your design background, getting into Web3. Like what did like the early childhood story look like? As I think that's something a lot of people don't touch on, and would love to shed some light on that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Moscow, Russia. I moved here when I was 6 years old. And so I grew up in Los Angeles my whole life, just kind of been a nomad all over Los Angeles from, Santa Monica to downtown all the way to the Valley. Grew up in what in the beginning, early days was a very normal household, but then eventually kind of started crumbling down, especially after the 2008 crash. So then my family kind of took a turn for the worst and really just didn't have the resources or just the stability that we needed to kind of have a really positive upbringing. So a lot of grind, a lot of early day kind of hustle. I'm a high school dropout, so I dropped out in ninth grade, just given the financial circumstances that the family kind of went through. I had to kind of work a lot of jobs, from a waiter, busboy, just like anything to scrap up cash together just to make ends meet for the entire family. I got into the entrepreneurship world pretty early. So like 14, I started little clothing brands here and there. I worked on Fairfax. This is like this street in LA that like Supreme is on, Diamond, and all these major brands. So I was really like, just instead of high school, just like from 10 a.m. till like 7 p.m. was just standing on the block and just really learning the sales game and just like meeting people. Back in the day, like Instagram wasn't like a thing. So like it was just like about networking and just rubbing the right kind of shoulders. And so a couple years went by. I was just working little retail jobs here and there and did a lot of sales jobs, like hard closing jobs. Eventually, I met somebody who kind of believed into my vision and helped start up a garment manufacturing studio. So I was really into clothes at that time. I was about 17. I opened up a small little atelier, you can call it. That was a no minimum garment manufacturing spot in Los Angeles. And so it was a really like interesting niche to be in because a lot of other manufacturers weren't doing this. Like everybody had a high minimum, like 1,000 orders or 100 minimum order quantity. So I was just the guy who was doing like one-offs. Like you can come to me if you're like a scrappy young startup, you can come on over and we can get one-off samples done. Be a little bit of a premium, but still nowhere near what you'd have to pay for large orders. And so that did pretty well. But like I started realizing, like especially nowadays, like I was realizing that I was not in a position with the right team to kind of grow it beyond where it was. It was just a one-man army. I had somebody who just put in like $10,000 and believed in me and helped me open up the business, but as a real one-man army. And I learned a lot. Like I was a 17-year-old kid who had 5 employees and this office space and, manufacturing and working with brands. I did projects for Opening Ceremony. I did some prints for Antisocial Social Club and some prints for Kanye's No More Party in LA and a couple other pretty cool brands. But that kind of fell apart on its own because partners I had weren't also aware of the landscape and just couldn't really help propel me in a different stratosphere. So that business ended up kind of just dwindling. From there, I kind of fell into like a depression, basically, because you go from like a boss to like working a regular job. Like it just wasn't it. So I was just like in denial to try to get another job, but it was really tough, and I had to make ends meet. So I ended up getting a few jobs, and then yeah, I think I forget what was like a turning point that I went from like a really bad situation into a positive situation. But I remember it was like a little bit of e-commerce and working with my buddy Luca, who's the CEO of Pudgy Penguins, and him and I kind of reconnected after a couple of years. Like he's seen me early on. Um, he reached back out and he wanted to partner up on doing a couple of e-commerce stores together. So he was working with this kid named Supreme Patty, who was just like this famous Instagram influencer. And he was like, "Hey, look, I have this like really successful store with him. Like, I need your like magic touch, like your sauce, like, you know, your branding, everything." So I was like, "Let's do it." We partnered up, we did some things together, and I started finally making more money. We ended up actually moving to Miami, Florida, where it was me, him, Supreme Patty, a couple other people living in this like house basically. And like for the first like, you know, 3-4 months, we were basically like this social media like influencer kind of group. He was the e-com guy. I was like the creative guy, the video guy and stuff like that. And we were shooting a lot of content. The Nelk Boys, this is like right before they popped off. They came down. We shot a vlog to like a video together as well, a nice little skit. So it was a really interesting time. But yeah, I ended up kind of also leaving that situation because it didn't work out with me and the manager for Supreme Patty. So I ended up kind of leaving that situation. Luckily, like while being in Miami, I met somebody who was a great kind of a mentor to me in a way. It was a great partner, a great mentor who brought me on to be a co-founder of this tech company. And because I had a pretty extensive design background and branding background, and I just understood what was hot and what was not, he kind of just brought me under his wing, and he just put me in a great position to help him kind of grow the company and reposition it nicely. Yeah, I mean, from there, I just kind of really got my like every experience that I could possibly have to help me understand how to run a business, how to grow a business, you know, every other vertical in a business from the strategic standpoint to brand, to growth, to product, really just gave me that fundamental understanding. The tech company is not around anymore just because of the COVID situation. But yeah, it kind of put me in a position to just really be a very confident entrepreneur. Before I was making a lot of mistakes, you know, and just kind of not knowing where to be. But once I started figuring it out and, you know, with good mentorship, I eventually kind of stood on my feet. So fast forward to today, I have a creative design practice based here in Miami, about 20 full-time designers. We essentially are all things web, branding, motion, and strategy. We got our early day success was on the 3D side. We did a lot of like dope CGI and like just created a lot of cool brands and really did really cool web experiences. But then eventually transitioned to strategy and growth. And so during the whole like COVID situation, we were fortunate to work with a couple brands and like really put them on the map. One of the brands that I worked really closely with Luca on, ironically, was called Gel Blaster. This is like one of his like most recent successful endeavors. So him and I both invested into that company. But he was, you know, we kind of looked at it and we were like, how can we insulate our losses? And Luca stepped up as a CMO. They didn't have a good CMO in place. They didn't actually have a CMO at all. And Luca, being the marketing guy, he was like, I'm perfect for this. Like, I can totally blow this out of the water. And guess who he called for all things branding and, you know, just content and, you know, strategy. And he called me. He was like, yo, like, I have an opportunity here. Do you want to invest with me? And do you want to grow this thing? I was like, let's do it. So 6 months, like this is like right before Pudgy. We just like took that company from a Kickstarter launch all the way to being in every single Walmart in the country. It grossed over roughly 120 million, I think, its first year. So that was really, really cool. Yeah. And today, I mean, we're obviously working on Pudgy Penguins together. Him being the CEO and kind of spearheading all things vision. I'm all things creative and brand and that kind of strategy, all while running my design practice, which harmoniously integrates with Pudgy Penguins ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, the context is incredible. So thank you for sharing. It feels like you've lived a lot of different lives being at a young age, personally.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm 25, but I look 30.
I'm 24 myself and totally hear you. So that's killer. So it sounds like you pretty much spearheaded the print on demand business before that even became a thing. So that's super interesting to hear with the clothing line. And then what I find fascinating about like what you've shared so far is a lot of people like to look at like the surface, but personally for me, like trying to be an entrepreneur or being one, I think one of the most hard aspects is building a team around you and people you can rely on. As personally being 24, I'm sure you have an extensive friend group and whatnot. And, you just talk about an idea at dinner, lunch, an event, and everyone's, I want to work with you, Peter. And I'm sure they ask you that. But I find it so fascinating how you've been able to cultivate like a solid team, as I think that really propels you to be, who you are and how successful you are currently. So I'd love to hear if you can kind of shed some light on like what that interview process looks like and kind of what you look at when you're bringing on people to the team, and what you think is kind of set Bureau X, apart from other design studios.
Yeah. So in terms of like a good hiring process, like majority of our hires were really around people who kind of express the same desire and the same tenacity and the same kind of personas of trying to, better themselves and like really trying to uh, create something really cool and memorable and something that will stick for a long time. And a lot of the people that we brought on, they weren't necessarily like the highest like possible recruits that you can possibly make, with extensive resumes. They had a spark. All of them had a spark in achieving something great. And so what I learned very early on is hiring great people is one, very expensive, and they come with a lot of baggage, in my opinion, though the experience and the added benefit of bringing on really, really top tier talent is always there. For a scrappy, bootstrap studio, it's very hard to make those kind of decisions. So what I did was I learned how to make great people. So instead of hiring great people, we built them. And so if we found somebody who was hungry enough and who expressed the same vision and the same kind of goals as we did, and just put in that real work, what we did is we built incentive structures. So you came in and you got paid an entry level position. And then as you grew, month one, month two, month three, your pay obviously reflected your growth here. And so that was kind of like a way for somebody to kind of prove themselves, for somebody to really learn these systems that work, and really help with putting out the output that we wanted to see. And so I really believe that although you can hire great people, in most roles, like really technical roles, you really do need to hire great people that really know what they're doing. But in, situations like creative roles, you just need to find that one spark, right? You need to know how to bring that energy out of them a little bit more. And once you do, I mean, the potential with these people that you bring on is exponential, and the energy is just there. Like you don't have to convince them to come in and do better. They just want to, because they were given that opportunity at a place like this. So some people will hire great people, but I like to build them.
No, I mean, I can't agree more. I really like how you stated that. The incentive structure too is super interesting to me, as I believe it gives your employees or colleagues per se the ability to prove themselves, and they kind of understand like the sky's the limit. So that's really interesting. I've never heard someone talk about that. And I definitely agree with like the spark aspect. You can just tell when someone wants to work and they have like that desire. And I think you saying spark was like the perfect word. So diving away from like the team aspect and building, I'd love to hear like your personal opinion on like entrepreneurship. So do you think entrepreneurs are born or they're like built over time? And would love to think how that kind of incorporated within like your journey so far.
Man, I think I would lean more into like it's got to be a part of your DNA, like it's like, to be an entrepreneur, you got to take the risks, and you just got to be able to put up with bullshit relentlessly and just consistently just get over the constant hurdles and the pain points that you always have to kind of deal through. So you have to be a persistent person, and you have to be consistent, and you have to have the courage to really be an entrepreneur, especially if you're somebody who literally had absolutely nothing and you're trying to get to a place where you want to have everything. And it's very hard to kind of make that leap. And so it requires a specific specimen, to kind of get to that place, and a specific type of energy, and a, there has to be some like burning desire, for you to be able to like get there. Like, you're not just an entrepreneur just because you want to work for yourself. Like, what is that burning desire? for me, it was to, get out of the grut, right? To basically buy the things that I want to buy and just to achieve the financial freedom that I wanted. And so that was kind of, it's still even here, like even at a place where I'm comfortable in life, I've been knocked down a few times, and I've always realized that getting comfortable is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen. And so I never get comfortable. I actually have like personally developed that anxiety that like most people don't want to, but I always feel like somebody's after me, or somebody's like trying to get my job, or somebody's trying to do better. So like I always just like always want to like strive for something better and cooler, and always try to achieve new heights. So yeah, I would say entrepreneurship is definitely part of your DNA, especially if you're good at it, right? Like you can't just, we need great people to work for us, right? For those entrepreneurs, right? So it's kind of like you got to just find your place. Are you a great leader? Can you create opportunities for yourself, and can you actually go and execute them? Or can you be a really good teammate? Like, can you really go out there and be that guy that somebody like an entrepreneur who has all these moving pieces, can they rely on you to basically support them in their entrepreneurship journey? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. I think as an individual, it's important to understand like where you fall on the spectrum, whether you're a better team member or an entrepreneurship or a leader per se.
Yeah.
So really interesting there. I think it's the way you're stating it is super interesting. I mean, by being an entrepreneur, it has to be something that's like born in you personally, from my own perspective, as if like I see it as like a curse and a blessing. Is like every day, even when I clock out, I'm like, there's like anxiety and paranoia of like, I could be learning right now. I could be building, X, Y, Z and whatnot. Yeah. It's like total curse sometimes, but it's what pushes people to be great. And I'd love to kind of transition into like the Pudgy Penguin realm, as you guys have been, absolutely on fire. It's super interesting. And funny enough here, I actually saw on Twitter the day that you guys took over Pudgy, and I literally mentally in my head, I was like, I need to buy some NFTs. And personally, I've never been into NFTs, but I've been into crypto since 2017. And that is probably one of the biggest regrets so far, is like in my head, I was like, I need Pudgies. I know.
So you're not holding any Pudgies?
I'm not. Don't get off the podcast, but I'm not. I wish I bought in literally that they were, the floor was dirt cheap to compare to what it is now. And I was like, I wanted to get like 10 or 12. I'm like, if I just sit on these, it's kind of like, I feel like the Peter and Luca effect, I've heard other people say it and whatnot, and it's true. So it's really interesting. So for Pudgies though, would love to hear like the landscape of like what drew you and your team to basically take over that project, and how has that process been to like become one of the largest players in the space?
So in terms of identifying the opportunity, it was more so of all of that has to be accredited to Luca, right? Like once he got exposed to the NFT space, it was just right time, right moves. He's like the months leading up to it, in terms of liquidity, it allowed him to be able to spot new opportunities that can probably get him into a different place. He was definitely a successful an entrepreneur and still is, but he played the right type of cards and was able to position himself in the right type of opportunity. And all of the relationships that he's made, all of the things that he's done historically, and his knowledge stack allowed him to identify this opportunity and to basically say like, okay, there was something here. We all know we're super early in this thing. Today, it feels like it's too late. You might have, like you say, you don't have anything and you're like, it's too late. It's already, floor's all time high, but you don't know that, right? Like none of us really know that if it really is that the all time high, or we really know that this is it. And so we just had a hunch that, we're very early on in this space because the industry is still lost. Everybody was like doing the roadmaps, like of these maps who were promising this and this. And it's like, you look at real companies, like they're just launching a product. Like they don't have these like long-term, like 20 step, utility, programs that outline their entire blueprints. Like reality, you show that to, your investors for like a long-term play before raising capital. And I get it. Like you got to sell the vision, you got to sell the plan. That's why like the whole mint aspect plays into it. But when Luca looked at it, he was like, this is a great opportunity. And then when he made that bid, he called myself and a couple other people because he knew he had the right resources. If the bid was accepted, he would position the right type of people to make this thing go beyond its current means. And so he called me. He's like, hey, I'm planning on buying this thing. Like, do you want to buy into it with me? And I was like, what's the game plan? He's like, dude, we're just going to fucking rescue this project. We're going to go, like, I'm thinking Disney, I'm thinking big time. And I was like, damn, like that's like risky. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, we don't know where this is going, but I've always had faith in Luca, and, you know, we've always known to believe into each other. And at that time, we were very liquid heavy, you know, like liquid at that point, we were like more investor mindset. So we were like, fuck it, you know, let's invest into this company. Let's build a company that we can stand behind and be something super proud of, especially, you know, for Luca. And so we were like, let's do it. So yeah, I mean, in terms of just like finding the opportunity, that was something that was completely on Luca. And he knew that if I and my experience integrated into a creative company, there could be something very fruitful there. So that was kind of how we, you know, got to a place of making the decision, finding the opportunity, and buying it. In terms of its, you know, growth, I would say, and just like the things that we've done so far, I think, you know, being able to do it on a $0 budget and just completely be always out of pocket and reverse minting, you know, a project, like they like to say, you know, we've never really had the opportunity to do much bigger than what we wanted to. We were always kind of restricted by the bounds of what the company was making, and, you know, just that like huge expense that we made, you know, coming into the project. And then the bear market turning, you know, it was a lot of, it was the bear market turning. It was more so of us, like, regardless of what the market conditions are, like we're entrepreneurs, and to us, like we're used to overcoming obstacles, and the bear market was just another obstacle for us that we didn't look at it, and we didn't go into a panic and say like we can't do this. We just did what we set out to do. The market reacted, you know, in a very positive way, because I think people realize that these guys are here to build, and these guys are here to, you know, save the current holders and also put this project into a whole different landscape. And so in a result of that, people had full conviction that, you know, we would probably be the guys that could do it. And so that's why the project, you know, started gaining reputation. You know, a lot of people were always hiding behind their profile photos, and like, there's no face behind the company. And, you know, we were, I would probably say the early people who were very open about putting our face in front of it. And like, you know, we have nothing to lose at the end of the day. Like, reality, we don't. And so like, why not put yourself in front of it? Because we're passionate entrepreneurs, and this is our baby, and we have to make this thing successful. There's no plan B. There's nothing for us to fall back on. That's it. Like, and we're not liquid heavy as we used to be, you know, like last year. So like, that's it. We got to make money with this thing. We got to, you know, we got to make money for our holders. We got to make them proud, and we're at the forefront of innovation. You know, it's very exciting to see where this industry is going to go, and the things that we're going to be able to achieve, to look back 5 years from now and be like, damn, we were early. That's crazy. We were early, you know? So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's going to be an incredible feeling. I think you touched on a lot of interesting points again with like the resources of like when you're tackling opportunities like that, and what gives you the ability to pounce and, you know, take those kind of bets is knowing you have like that arsenal per se that you can bring the right team in and, you know, really propel that vision. So I know with Pudgy, you guys have a bunch of different like facets. There's like the IP aspect. You guys are getting into children's toys. I've even seen you guys on the Building in Public series. You guys have like a plush Pudgy going to schools, which I thought was so killer. And I know obviously you guys are doing a bunch of other stuff, but could you kind of explain for anyone listening or watching like the different revenue streams that you guys are targeting currently and potentially looking to target?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, you kind of nailed it on the head. Like, the toy initiative is pretty big. Right now, the big initiative for me is to bring more awareness to Pudgy Penguins, the name and the brand itself, right? And the way that we do that is through traditional Web2 channels, right? For me, it's just marketing. There is no like Web2 and Web3. Web3 is just this very small niche that eventually will evolve into something bigger. But as of right now, the massive upside is on the Web2 side, which is just general marketing, right? And so we had to dial back to kind of repositioning ourselves and being like, okay, great. The NFTs aside, what else are we going to do to generate revenue for the company and actually get us in a position where the everyday consumer can be like, oh, I know Pudgy Penguins, right? They don't know Pudgy Penguins, the Web3 NFT project that like, you know, wasn't a great thing, but then turned into a great thing. They know Pudgy Penguins for what? For these cute penguins, the great content. Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think think Pudgy Penguins, right? It's, oh, I like the animation series, or, oh, the Instagram account. I've seen this Instagram account somewhere. So that's where the social strategy was kind of rooted in, was we need to build that familiarity for the consumer to actually know what Pudgy Penguins is, to just implant that penguin into everybody's minds, right? And start developing that likeness for them. And so part of that strategy was to start building a social page and then also monetizing that page, right? And so part of the monetization strategy is the toys, right? So the toys for us is once the content becomes mainstream enough, we start creating the toys that are perfectly positioned for the viewership of that content. The middle of America moms, it's the millennials, the Gen Zers, the people who genuinely just enjoy this relatable internet kind of rift kind of content. And eventually, when they develop an emotion for this IP, they're going to want to become avid supporters of it. And the way that you do that is through selling product, right? And we didn't want to just go into a merch play and sell T-shirts with like a penguin on it, though. That's that's always a route, and that's something that we have explored. But that was more so of a community initiative rather than a, hey, here's a Pudgy Penguin, you don't know anything about them, but you just fell in love by watching these videos, and now you're like, oh my god, I love this penguin so much. Now you have way more kind of incentive to go out there and buy these products that are backed by some sort of like emotional aspect. And that's why Luca hones in on the emotional utility, because the emotional utility helps kind of drive that momentum, that early adoption that we're looking for, to kind of help us generate the additional streams of revenue that we're looking for. So toys is a big thing for us, just being able to distribute into as many retailers as possible, but also get that very healthy sell through. And again, everyday people that are walking into the stores are not the Web3 guys, the crypto, NFT bag holders. Like it's the everyday mom, it's the everyday person who walks in and is like, oh my God, I love that penguin. But if they know what that penguin is, if they're like, oh my God, that's Pudgy Penguins, then we know that is the ultimate success we're looking for.
Yeah, you guys all win. No, it's incredible. And it's funny too, because like, congrats, by the way, on the strategy. It's incredible. Like the gifts you guys are pumping out, I've been seeing hundreds, millions of times. So that's huge. The Instagram too. I mean, your guys' organic reach, I saw you guys talking about the reels getting over like 3 million views organically, is absolutely insane.
12 million now on one of the recent videos. Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, it's funny because like when you hear you speaking about it, it sounds like common sense in my opinion, right? But like when I feel like all these other projects are like trying to make these crazy hard roadmaps, there's only 1% of people that are gonna know about crypto in the first place. Get on MetaMask, go sign 20 different transactions, get this egg, do that. It's just doesn't make sense for the everyday consumer. And like, yeah. I just love what you guys are doing. You guys have hit every nail on the tee, in my opinion. So it's super interesting. I saw your guys' varsity jackets. So is that going to be for the community? I saw you guys designing those. Those things look killer.
Yeah. So some alpha for you. Those jackets are extremely limited to 90 pieces. I say 90 because there's 10 that are exempt for the team and the people who help produce them. But there's only going to be 90 of those colored jackets. We will be dropping a inverse color, so it's going to be a darker mode of that. But this is our first approach to kind of binding the physical good to somewhat allowing the collectors, the avid supporters of Pudgy Penguins, to participate in the bigger grand scheme kind of initiative, which is, having a collector profile of sorts that can show like your support, which then, is tied to more monetization incentives. So the jacket is that first approach. It is also an extension of a new brand that we're building out. It's called Igloo. And so that brand is going to be for the everyday consumer. It's essentially has nothing to do with Pudgy Penguins, but it's part of the ecosystem when you think of it from a deeper level. So we're trying to infiltrate consumers on a few different fronts and a few different demographics as well, and interest groups too. So the clothing side, given that Luca and I have an extensive background in that, it's not just something we're just jumping in because we're like, oh, merch. It's we built brands, and we've had success in participating in brand building. So this is our first attempt into introducing something where it's a byproduct of Pudgy Penguins, but we're not out loud just saying, hey, this is buy Pudgy Penguins, go buy it and be a supporter of Pudgy Penguins. Yeah, it's a byproduct. It's an extension.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. It reminds me of exactly what Nelk did with Happy Dad, of like your
Right.
average drinker is not going to, you maybe enjoy all of our videos, but Happy Dad's going to be a standalone brand that's tied to the umbrella
Exactly.
person. So it's
Exactly.
really interesting there. And I think something like for anyone listening or watching again, I think it's incredible to see like how all your different life cycles of like and allowed you to end up where you are today. And you've been able to utilize all those different tools, in my opinion, of like the e-commerce play ties into Pudgy now, the design background ties into Pudgy, like your entrepreneurship. So like for anyone listening though, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, I personally think one valuable piece of advice is if you haven't taken that step or you're not in that circumstance to take that step, make sure you're able to at least work on a job that you think that can tie in to your end vision down the road. So it's been incredible. But I mean, I think this episode's been great. Peter, is there anything else you want to touch on for episode 11?
Yeah, I'll do a plug-in. Make sure you follow at Building in Public on YouTube. Get a closer look at the behind the scenes of how we're building out Pudgy Penguins, and we're gonna do a fair share of a little bit more exposure into the pain points that we're dealing with. Too, not everything is as glamorous and to be like a TV show, but we'll definitely do our fair share to inspire others to kind of take that same leap. Make sure you follow Pudgy Penguins all across the board. Yeah, you can find me at Chef Goyard on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Right on. Well, thank you again, Peter, and everyone. Go follow all the different channels here, and also Building in Public is probably the new favorite show on YouTube. So definitely strongly suggest taking a good look, and we'll see you guys in the next episode on the Frontier.